lots of clutches to look at here, and you can see there is quite a few different types. Okay, so here is the original disc, factory fitted, and again it's made by XZE like the cover. 6 springs and 3 rivets hold the centre together. The lining will look a little bit different on some depending on the age. They're always constantly changing, improving the formula of the organic compounds over the years. Now these are discontinued. I'm not sure when, but I've not seen any for a while included in clutch kits unless it's old stock. But that's the same as what was fitted from the factory. They seem reasonably okay. The springs, all these type of clutches with the springs in the hub, they're quite important to give you good, to help the gearbox out in terms of shock loading. The problem is if you're really violent with the clutch, like drag racing, just being quite abusive, then you can break out the springs. They can, this outer piece here that holds the springs in place, you can break it and the spring will pop out. But if you're reasonably sympathetic mechanically, then there should be no issues. Over time though, the springs will lose a little bit of tension and they can rattle slightly in the hub here. Not a huge problem unless it gets bad, but there's more chance again that they're going to start to perhaps try and break out. Now what it's been replaced with, because like I say it's been discontinued, is these have been around a while now. It's this 3-spring disc. It's a little bit lighter. These are actually, I believe, the factory fitted item on the Copen Turbo Daihatsu, and they've just used that instead because this is discontinued. They use this for the GTti as well, which is a bit crappy because to start with, the capacity of these springs isn't really strong enough. There's been quite a few people who have pulled out these discs when they've been worn out and found that these springs are extremely loose, or even cracks. Where the spring is about to break away. So I wouldn't advise using this one or this type unless the car is standard. It's just not really man enough or up to the job in the long term. If you've seen evidence of them failing, so I wouldn't consider it as a good option myself. Now we have NKK, their version, 6 springs. I like these. Again, like the cover, they make quite a good quality. Oh shit, I've put some bloody oil on it. I have to get that brake cleaner on that. They make a good quality disc. It's nice rivets again. I like their big rivets, NKK. And then on the front here, you've got this. You can see how they've tried to ensure the springs stay where they should with these kind of shields for the springs. So, I'm really annoyed about that because I did check that there was no oil, grease or whatever. put that somewhere else. Check they're not all contaminated now. Now we have this is an NKK as well. These are actually also seen by a company called ASCO Azin, I think it's called. But NKK put their name on it as well. They presumably linked to the companies. These are also quite good. On first appearance, it looks a little bit flimsy. It's very lightweight. It's the lightest disc of them all. It's only, I think, about 600 grams. No, not even that. About 580 grams. But although it looks a little bit less substantial, no one's actually broken any of those. The springs have always stayed good. So again, it's one I do like. An older version, it's got the same code on it, in fact, DDO20. It's just an older version, and they obviously decided to stop doing those. It's heavier. Again, quite substantial. Nice and thick. Oh, I'm paranoid now about this bloody oil. I've not seen any of those for years, since I've had that in the cupboard for probably about 10 years. But it's the sort of thing you might see occasionally on eBay or something, you know, old stock. And here at the top, this is a copy of the original disc made by a company called Seiko, which is Korean. I'd only seen, a couple of years ago I saw this for the first time, and it's an almost exact copy of the original. Just ignore the colour. But in almost every respect, it's the same. So it might be something to do with when this was discontinued, this company kind of stole the design. Now we're looking at the more serious items in terms of performance. So these are paddle type discs. What I've got here, these are pretty crap. This is what used to be sold by Camskill, and you can see it's 3 pucks, and all they've done is made a plate up, had this presumably laser cut, and then it's attached to, like I said earlier, one of the crappy type discs. And this one's used. Anyway, see, look, rattly springs. And then also, as proof that these springs aren't good enough, on the stoppers, which is built, it's the same where it's riveted. There's also this section is designed to what they call stopper pins. I don't know if it will show it, but there is some really bad wear. I can hold it up to the light perhaps. There. This has actually cut itself into the stopper because the springs are too weak. So, not very durable. What I don't like about this type of disc is the way that the friction pucks are riveted on, and you don't get much wear before you'll end up wearing down to the rivets. There's not much probably only less than a millimetre. In fact, here I've got a... Now this is not Daihatsu, but it's the same concept. You can see that it's brand new, but you only got about half a millimetre, maybe slightly more, of wear available on this before you're down to rivets. It's ridiculous. And this is all this is available, would be available. So I don't really like it. It just seems a bit crude to me. So a few years ago I stumbled across Tilton. Is that how you pronounce it? Tilton. It's an American company. They specialise in racing clutches. Like a lot of the American performance items, some of the top brands are very good. So that's how it was. That's another one I have. Again, it's not a Daihatsu item. I just discovered it on eBay and thought, well, hang on, it's the correct diameter. Being American, they do it in inches. What is it meant to be? 7.25 inch, and that works out, I think, at 184 millimeters or 183. So very slightly wider, larger diameter, but that's no issue for the flywheel. We're only talking about a couple of millimeters. So it's quite a popular size for racing clutches. So they do these discs where they're actually bonded. The material is bonded to the backing plate, so there's no rivets. I mean, I didn't really pay much for this at all. I don't pay much for anything. So the idea was, I thought, oh, hang on. All you've got to do is cut out the middle, and then you can mount a standard hub, which will fit the Daihatsu, onto the disc. So that's what happened. What this is then is a Korean-made Valio disc. This one's actually from the Sport Track 1.6 Sport Track. It's the same spline, but a nice hefty hub centre. We've got what looked like 4 springs. There's actually 8 because each spring is doubled up. So nice stiff springs, and you can see now on the back that the Tilton has been cut and bolted to the hub. So almost in my mind, it is quite a heavy beast, but a lovely looking item. So the advantage here is higher friction. You're going to gain about 20 to 30% clutch capacity just with the disc, because the friction material, it's more like brake pad type material rather than a soft organic. You won't get this if you get it hot. It's not going to burn. In fact, a lot of them they tend to grip more when they're hot. More aggressive, of course, when you release the clutch. You're going to get a more aggressive bite. Maybe not the sort of clutch you want to have in a road car, but a lot of people still do. With this type of disc as well, you can see that is a solid, a rigid item, which is why they are harsh when you find the biting point. There's no cushion effect. On a standard disc, you can see that between the two sides there's a gap, and inside there is what we call the marcel, and it's a wavy layer that compresses, and that's what gives you your progressive bite on a clutch. When you bring the clutch up to the biting point, then you've got a little bit more travel before it's fully engaged, and that's this squashing together. But there's no marcel with these paddle type discs. Once you're going to go, they're going to go. Once you're on that bite. And then finally here, we've got basically the same again, but this is a 4-puck. Use the same hub again, a Sport Track hub with the 8 springs. And because it's 4-puck, it's a lighter disc. This is probably my favourite one actually. So anything's possible if you've got, you know, you can always, you could take any of these discs to a clutch specialist and they should be able to make it into a paddle. There's no reason why not. But you've got to consider how good the hub is, because let's say this one, for example, I said this was the lightest one, works very well, but suddenly attach a new plate and, you know, make a new plate up and turn that into a paddle, could be asking for trouble with the strength of the centre there. You know, they're just not designed for it. And the final option could be something like this again, where you actually, again, I picked up this disc cheap. It's the correct size again, with the intention of, again, perhaps putting a hub onto it, or you could even just bolt the spline directly to it, like this style. But bear in mind, without those springs, you're really going to shock the gearbox more. Great if you're going to do drag racing and dump the clutch, then you've got no springs to worry about. There's nothing there to break out. But you're going to really, well, you're going to break the gearbox at some point with one of these style of what they call a rigid hub. So you really want some dampening effect, and as long as you've got a beefy hub with good springs, and you're not completely abusive, then a paddle type with a hub can be a good option. So the advantage of these, like I said, is you do get some more capacity of the clutch. On the previous video when we looked at the clutch covers, if you imagine the figures that I was quoting for the torque capacity, well, with one of these type of discs, with this metallic friction, you're going to gain about 20 to 30% more torque capacity just using one of these discs. I mean, even the standard Daihatsu cover, with one of these, for example, you would probably hold 150, 160 pounds-feet of torque, no problems. Oh, there's a flipping moth that's coming here now, it's buzzing around. Right, I'm going to end it here because that's buzzing around my head. There he is. Where's it gone? Oh, it's in the box. There we are then.